Hi, George Haas here. I wanted to continue talking about meditation interventions and the fourth module, which is difficult interpersonal relationships as causal to relapse. I like to talk about it in terms of attachment theory, John Bowlby's attachment theory, and how conditioning causes us to organize a working model of ourselves and a working model of other people, and how we engage in relationship from that place. There are five adult attachment categories. The first is secure. So secure people have the view of themselves as somebody who's capable of getting their needs met, and they have a view of the rest of us as people who are willing to meet their needs. It's a way of being in the world. Dismissive adults have the view of themselves as very capable, but they view the rest of us as not capable, not really able to meet their needs. It provides for them a moral justification to take what they want. Preoccupied adults, one end is a kind of helplessness, the other end is a fearfulness, see themselves as incapable of getting their needs met, but they see the rest of us as capable of meeting their needs. So it presents in them the idea that what they really need to do is hook up with somebody else who will take care of them. Fearful avoidant, oops, fearful avoidant adults view themselves as incapable of getting their needs met, and they view the rest of us as hostile to meeting their needs. A very different view from the others. And then we have unresolved as a category. This means that somebody uses dissociation as the primary means of emotional regulation. What I thought I would do today is talk about secure attachment, and in the weeks coming we can talk about the other attachment strategies. I like to talk about attachment as a skill set. Um, it's easier to work with in that way, in the sense that these are skills that you have in relationship, and when your attachment mechanism goes off, that is to say, when you have the perception of the possibility of being abandoned, you have a strategy for how to regulate with that, how to deal with that. So people who are secure see themselves, as I said, as capable of getting their needs met, and they see that as a set of skills that they offer in relationship. They see other people as open and interested in taking care of them, and so they approach people in that way. So I have put together a list of 14 skills that are associated with secure attachment. So associated with the working model of self and how to engage in relationship with other people. The first skill is a coherent narrative, or a coherent thinking process. So you experience what happens to you, and you are able to integrate it in a way that matches pretty well with what happened. You're able to think of your life story, your autobiography, understand what happened to you when you were a child, how those conditions affected you, and how you relate to people in the world based on an understanding of what happened. In insecure attachment, the coherent narrative seems to be missing or affected by what happened. And so really the understanding of one's life is held in an incoherent way. The next skill is thinking about thinking. Metacognition is another word for that, or mentalizing. We are aware of the content of our thinking, and we are also aware that we think the thought, or that the thinking of the thought has a purpose beyond the content. The third is seeing the value of attachment, understanding that to be in an intimate relationship that's mutually beneficial requires time, energy, and resources. Are we willing to commit the time, energy, and resources necessary to have functioning relationships. The next one is a pair. Ease of expressions of self internally. Are you able to allow all aspects of your experience into consciousness so that you know what's happening, or do you need to suppress and split off certain aspects because you don't appreciate that you have them? And the next one is clear manifestation of self. Are you able to, and are you free to express or not express the internal experiences you have based on your understanding of the appropriateness of that? The next one is forgiveness of self and others. I like to say easy forgiveness of self and others. Have you noticed in your day-to-day life that things don't always go well? People don't always show up well. Is it possible in maintaining a relationship that you're easy about that, easy to forgive yourself when you don't measure up to your own standards, easy to forgive others when they don't measure up to your standards? Compassion. In the Buddhist sense, compassion is the willingness to hold the suffering experience of someone else. In a broader sense, compassion is to be able to hold any experience of the other person. It comes through a process of attunement, so you place your attention on them, they place your attention on you. You know that you have each other's attention, and this facilitates an empathetic connection between the two of you. And then in a compassionate embrace of someone else, you allow the experience of their suffering. You experience it actually in your body, and you bring your emotional regulation skills to it. And in this way, that helps the other person come back into emotional balance. Balance and sense of humor is the next skill. Do you see things in a balanced way or in the big picture way, so that the small irritations don't get blown out of proportion, and that you're able to maintain balance in the context of relationship? And also sense of humor. Sense of humor is really a vital tool in understanding the internal experience of another person. Humor is a cognitive function, so people need to be in low stress, low emotional distress, in order to find humor in their experience, so that if you test somebody by cracking a joke and they don't laugh, and you know them to have a sense of humor, then you know that their stress level is so high that you can't reason with them. You have to come from a place of pure emotion. Recognizing different views of the same experience. This is a basic to the Buddhist understanding that everybody's conditioning is different, so everybody's capacity to understand what's happening is different. That because your conditioning is different from another person's conditioning, just in the nature of that, your view, your experience is different than somebody else's. Both of you witness the same event, and each of your experience is different because your conditioning has been different. Recognizing the effects of conditioning. What happened to you, and how does that directly affect your current responses to the world, to yourself? Not minimizing, not maximizing conditioning. The next one is seeing clearly what happened without minimizing negative effects. Not all of us grow up in ideal family situations. If you have addiction, it's quite likely that you grew up in a family system that was far from ideal. And so, even though we survive those situations, not to minimize the effect that they're currently having on us, currently how they've affected the way in which we interpret the experiences of the world. And the next is to be authentic. And for people who have addiction, authenticity is often challenging. We grew up in family systems where our authentic expressions were unwelcome, and we learned the skill of inauthenticity. Often we developed a sense of our inauthentic self And so that's a skillful way to be in the world, and because we paid so little attention to our authentic self and to the skills of presenting ourselves authentically, that's a kind of minimal skillful set there. So we engage in this process of moving from an inauthentic expression of ourselves to an authentic expression. It isn't so much a matter of making up your mind to do that, but being able to tolerate the emotional consequence of moving out of inauthenticity into authenticity. Most of us will be aware of the authentic response to the present moment as it unfolds, but if it creates a perception that we might be abandoned by expressing ourselves authentically, the inauthentic thing we could do arises in the mind. If we push into the inauthentic response to the present moment, it relieves the abandonment terror. So we get something out of it immediately. We may think that we're preserving the relationship by being inauthentic, but in being authentic, we don't rely on the relationship because we don't know whether somebody would stay with us or not. And we eventually become angry because of it. We're angry that we feel the other person doesn't allow us to be authentic. We're in a state of constant deprivation because we're not able to ask authentically for what we need from the relationship. And so even if somebody gives us the thing that we ask for, if it comes from an inauthentic place, we're not really getting that thing which we need. If we push into the authentic expression, it intensifies the abandonment terror, and if we can hold that experience as if it were the wall of a dam, it dissolves, and we're hit with this wave of terrible sadness from all of the losses through our previous inauthenticities. And if we can ride that out, we come into a place of security in relationship, which is totally worth doing. But the difficulty of the abandonment terror and the terrible sadness to get through can be challenging. To be flexible is the next one. Things don't always happen the way that you might like them to happen, and you need to roll with the conditions of the present moment. You need to be flexible in that. And the last skill of the secure set is to be generous. Many of us who have addiction issues come from a place of scarcity, that there isn't going to be enough, that we need to really take the things that we need, because if we don't do that, they won't be available to us. And so this is shifting from a place of scarcity into a place of generosity, particularly around the care that we provide for other people, to really see what matters to them and to become a caretaker for them in a way that's meaningful to them. Paying attention, of course, to whether or not that's mutual, that they then respond by taking care of us in a way that's meaningful to us. So this is the skill set of secure relationships, secure attachment in relationships. Many of us who come from a place of insecure relationships may look at this as a colossal amount of resources, time, energy, material resources. In insecure relationships, we're used to restricting the amount of capital, of social capital that we put into the relationship, because what we get back from it doesn't seem to be a good value. In secure relationships, what you get back from that is this sense of being cared for, of being loved, of being seen and appreciated. And because it's a mutual exchange, the energy that we put into taking care of them comes back in the care that we receive. In insecure relationships, you put energy in and you don't get that much back out of them. So we're not used to the level of energy of commitment that secure relationships take, and may be reluctant to do that. So that's part of this process of beginning to see the value of relationships, so that you're willing to actually show up for them. So in the next weeks, we'll talk about the characteristics of the other attachment strategies, and then how they work together, or actually function together so we can talk about a process of moving in the direction of more secure relationships. Thanks.